Welcome to The Last Track, where we help people showcase the last track of their life story in their final wishes. I am your host, Brian Norris, the co-owner of Bateman Funeral Home in Newport, Oregon. Just like a song can bring you back to a day, a time, and a memory, so too can a well-planned service. And we're going to be talking today a little bit about a water burial. So what is a water burial? Well, there's two options in a water burial. You can either have a scattering of the ashes, or you can have a burial of a whole body. So let's talk a little bit about that and how those differ. There's also inland burial in water areas, and there's also ocean, and there's different regulations for each one of those. So let's talk about first burial at sea. So the burial at sea requires a biodegradable container that is not going to contribute to marine debris. It needs to be 3 nautical miles from the land. The U.S. Navy and the Coast Guard have guidance that you can go to their websites and find some of that information. If you're like a Navy veteran and want to have a water burial with the Navy, there needs to be some coordination on that, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Coast Guard, same kind of a thing. If you're a Coast Guard member and want to be buried using the Coast Guard, which are some of the things that they do provide to their veterans, that's like almost a whole different topic. But just know that that's available. You can be buried with or without a casket. And that kind of sounds interesting. And why is that? Well, as long as it's being weighted, you can be buried with or without a casket. Most of the time, you're going to be with a minimum of a shroud. And then there's going to be weights tied around the legs, and that'll be pulled down. The reason it needs to be weighted is you don't want to have a body floating around and then somebody thinks that somebody was tossed overboard or it's a missing person. You want it to be weighted and taken all the way down. And it needs to have some substantial ballast inside the casket or tied to the body in order to do a burial. You must notify the EPA so that they know that that's going to happen. And generally, a service that you are working with will do all of that. They will contact the EPA, that type of a thing. When you're going out to sea, you can also have, if you're going to mark or memorialize it, you can have like flowers, petals, that type of thing placed in the water after the burial. Or the scattering, that type of thing. And so work with the captain of the ship that's going to be doing that service, because they will know to turn into the wind, or they'll know how far out to go. They'll also know and be able to record the nautical, the latitude and longitude of where the placing was done, so that way if you wanted to go back and memorialize it later in the future, you can, because you'll have those coordinates. Something also to keep in mind, if this is going to be done by the Navy or the Coast Guard, it's going to be while that vessel is deployed, and family is not going to be allowed to go when that service takes place. If you're doing it through a private company, family can come, and there's lots of different things that we can do, and we'll talk a little bit about that, to memorialize and to be able to have a meaningful service as well. Now let's talk, we're going to switch gears going from the ocean to inland, because sometimes maybe somebody wants to be buried in a lake, or maybe somebody wants to be scattered in a lake. The majority in fact, I can't even tell you, I don't believe there's ever been, that I've been involved in, where there's been a burial of a full body in a lake. That's something that generally does not take place. But you can be scattered in lakes, rivers, byways, that type of a thing. And so there are some rules and regulations that go around that as well. Scattering of cremated remains in lakes and in inland rivers and waters are not subject to federal regulation under the MPRSA or the Ocean Dumping Act. States, however, may have regulations, and so you're going to need to check with your individual states what they require and what they can allow. The majority of the scatterings will take place in internal non-ocean lakes, that type of a thing, and they're subject to the Clean Water Act. So that's something that you need to keep in mind as well. So if you're going to be going on to private land, private lakes, private rivers, that type of a thing that run through private property, you'll need to check with the owners of that land. If it's public space, then it's going to be managed under the Clean Water Act. For inland water burials and cremations, that type of a thing, there's going to be permits that are going to be required, and that you'll work with your funeral director to get those permits. You might scatter petals, flowers, that type of a thing in the water when you're done as well. But again, you can't be adding to any debris, trash, that type of thing. So, silk petals is something that you won't want to do. Live petals of flowers is something that you would want to do. Scattering of objects, wreaths, bubbles, that type of thing where you blow bubbles, that is a very environmentally friendly way to be able to celebrate that person's life. When you're working with a boat captain, work with that boat captain on what they suggest and require. You might need rain gear. You might need to have some boots on. You might need to have some motion sickness pills. Most of the time, if you're going out to sea, there's going to be certain times of the year that you'll be more likely to go out than others. You be prepared for the fact that you pick something 3 months down the road, that date might get canceled. And just be aware of that and understand that. So like if family members are all flying in on a particular day, it might get canceled. We can't control the weather. And if you've got a gale going on, you're not going out. It's just not going to happen. And we've had that happen with families where they were hopefully planning on a beautiful middle July and we're having a storm. And so that's unpredictable, and just make sure that you keep that in mind. Taking pictures of where the scattering was done. If there might be a prominence, like here along the Oregon coast, there's a place called Rocky Point, and everybody knows where that's out. It's a big pull out, that type of a thing. And sometimes you can do a scattering within view of that land, so that way in the future, if you wanted to go sit, contemplate, that type of a thing, you have a place on land where you can go park and you can look out into the ocean area of where the scattering had taken place. Religious prayers, songs, that type of thing can take place. Again, check with the captain, work with the captain so that you know how many people can go on the boat, so that way if you have to limit the number, you're not surprised when you get there and you've got 30 people ready to go and you can only take 20. Not a good situation to be in. Again, keep in mind that the Navy committal service is performed while the ship is deployed, so family is not allowed to go on. With a shore burial or inland burial, you can have military honors, or if you're going to be going out to sea, you could actually have military honors take place at the dock prior to leaving. Navy military personnel will go anywhere. They'll go to parks, they'll go to homes, they'll go to churches, they'll go wherever you want them to go. They want to provide that service for that veteran. So you could actually go to the port and you could have a service at the port before you leave. And you could have the military honors. They can play taps, fold a flag, present it to the next of kin, and then you go out to sea. Generally, you do that before you would go, not after you're coming back. But again, depending on family needs, the military will do anything. They'll work around your schedule to do that. Having songs, saying prayers, all appropriate. Just again, work with the captain so that you know what they can and can't do. Okay? Hopefully this helps you, gives you some ideas about water burials, either at ocean, inland, or at sea. If you have questions or concerns, you can email us at info@batemanpacificview.com. Well, we have reached that time in our podcast where we take a time and we take a moment and we remember all the families that are experiencing a loss, and we light a virtual candle in their memory. Let's take a moment. If you have questions or concerns, you can email us at info@batemanpacificview.com. Forward it to your friends as well. This has been The Last Track. I'm Brian Norris. You can find out more about Bateman Funeral Home at our website at batemanpacificview.com. You can visit us on our website, and you can also leave us messages there, or you can visit us on Facebook. If you have any feedback or any questions about today's episode, you're welcome to call us at 541-265-2751, or you can send us an email at info@batemanpacificview.com. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for listening.